The city was dying. Once it had been a shining capital of stone towers and flowing crystal bridges. A place of music and bright banners. Now the streets were broken, the air thick with black smoke, and the only music was the howl of distant gunfire and the crack of collapsing buildings. Captain Aaron Hale moved through the ruins with the speed of someone who had learned that hesitation meant death. His boots crunched over shattered glass and scorched stone as he darted from one broken wall to the next. Every few steps he paused, scanning with the sights of his rifle, the green tint of his visor cutting through the smoke. The wind carried the smell of burnt metal, mixed with the acrid stench of alien fuel and the bitter taste of dust. Somewhere above, a ship screamed overhead, its engines like thunder. But Aaron didn't look up. Sound could distract. And distraction could kill. His mission was simple on paper: infiltrate the enemy sector, retrieve the stolen intel drive, and make it back before nightfall. But in war, simple never meant easy. Then he heard it, a thin, trembling sound. Cutting through the chaos, it wasn't the metallic ring of weapons or the rumble of distant explosions. It was crying. He froze, pressing himself against a burnt support pillar. Crying was dangerous here. It meant someone was alive, and in this part of the city that made them a target. Aaron turned his head slowly, letting his ears track the direction. The sound came from somewhere to his left, deeper into the wreckage. He checked the street. It was open, too open, then slid across quickly. Keeping low, the closer he got, the clearer the sound became. It was soft, high-pitched, and wrong, not human. There was a strange melody to it, like each sob carried a note. The way wind sometimes whistled through metal pipes. A flash of movement made him drop to one knee. Weapon raised, but it wasn't an enemy soldier. It was a child. She was crouched between two slabs of collapsed concrete, barely more than a shadow in the smoke. Her skin was pale silver, almost glowing against the dark rubble. Her large eyes reflected the dim light, shimmering with fear, each tear catching the glow like liquid glass. Her clothes were torn, dust coating her hair and shoulders, and in her small hands she clutched a strip of faded blue cloth. Aaron guessed it was a scarf or a piece of a blanket, something she wasn't letting go of no matter what. She saw him and froze. Her thin shoulders shook, and she pressed herself tighter into the corner. He could see the wild mix of emotions in her eyes: fear, confusion, and a spark of hope. "Help, please," she whispered, her voice trembling in broken galactic common. Aaron's orders screamed in his head. This wasn't part of the mission. Carrying a child would slow him down, make him a bigger target. But another explosion ripped through the building behind her, sending sparks and bits of metal raining down. The blast was close enough to make her flinch and curl into herself. He didn't think after that. He moved. "Come on, kid, we're getting out of here," he said, his voice low but firm. She stared for a heartbeat longer, then placed her small, trembling hand into his. When he lifted her, he was startled at how light she was. It was like holding a shadow, fragile, yet clutching his armor with surprising strength. He could feel her heart pounding against his chest. His earpiece crackled to life. His squad leader's voice cut in, hard and sharp. "Hale, report. Where the hell are you?" "Enemy armor is moving in from the east. I found a civilian," Aaron replied, moving quickly down a narrow side path. There was a pause, followed by a cold answer. "Leave her. That's an order. The intel comes first. She's not your problem." Aaron didn't answer. The girl's arms tightened around his neck, and he could feel her small breaths against his collar. He took another turn, heading for the old service tunnels instead of the main street. Twice they had to stop: once as a squad of enemy scouts marched past, their armor gleaming with fresh plasma burns, and once as a massive enemy mech stalked across the intersection, its footsteps making the ground tremble. Each time, Aaron pressed her against the wall, his own body blocking her from view. She didn't make a sound when a nearby building began to collapse, the air filled with a roar and a cloud of dust. Aaron dropped low, covering her head with his arm as debris rained down. Sharp fragments scraped against his armor. But she was untouched when it was quiet again. He looked into her eyes. This time there was no fear, only trust. They reached the service tunnel, a dark, narrow path beneath the streets. It smelled of rust and stale air. But it was hidden from the sky, hidden from the war, as they walked. The girl's voice broke the silence. "My name, Lyra." Aaron glanced down at her, his voice steady. "I'm Aaron. You're safe now." Lyra, but in his heart, he knew safe didn't exist in this war, and saving her meant he had just crossed a line he could never uncross. The service tunnel was colder than the streets above. Moisture dripped from the ceiling, splashing quietly against the rusted floor plates. Aaron adjusted his grip on Lyra as he moved, keeping his rifle in one hand. The faint echo of their footsteps made him uneasy. In war, sound could travel, and the wrong ears could be listening. How long? Safe. Lyra whispered. Aaron glanced down at her. Her silver skin caught what little light there was, making her look ghost-like in the tunnel's gloom. "We'll be safe when we're out of the city," he answered. She nodded, but didn't ask more. She seemed to understand that talking too much could be dangerous. He checked his wrist display. His squad was 2 blocks north. Heading for the extraction point, he was going in the opposite direction. It didn't matter. There was no way he was leaving her behind. A faint vibration reached him through the floor. Not from above, from behind. He stopped and crouched, placing Lyra gently on her feet. "What is it?" she asked softly. He held up a finger for silence. Then he heard it, the distant hiss of servos, the thud of armored boots, and the low growl of an alien warbeast. "They're tracking us," Aaron muttered. He switched off his helmet light and moved them into deeper shadow. The tunnel widened ahead, branching into 3 paths. He picked the middle one, moving quickly but carefully, his ears locked on the sound behind them. The enemy patrol wasn't moving fast. They were confident. They thought their prey was trapped halfway through the tunnel. Aaron spotted a faint glow up ahead. It wasn't daylight. It was the cold green shimmer of alien sensors. He swore under his breath and backed into a narrow maintenance alcove. Lyra pressed close against him, her small hands gripping his armor. The green lights swept past, slow, searching, almost like a predator sniffing. The air, Aaron kept perfectly still, his finger resting against the trigger. The light paused, then moved on. They waited another 10 seconds before stepping out. "Why they chase us?" Lyra whispered. "Because they don't leave witnesses," Aaron said quietly. They moved again, this time staying closer to the tunnel's edge. The sound of the patrol behind them was louder now. Then, ahead, came another noise, a metallic clank, followed by the sharp snap of boots on the floor. Aaron's gut went cold. They were surrounded. He pulled Lyra into an abandoned storage room and closed the sliding door. It didn't fully seal, but it would give them a few seconds to think. Inside, the room was cluttered with broken crates, rusted tools, and old ventilation pipes. Aaron scanned for another exit but found only a half-collapsed vent in the wall. "It's too small," he muttered. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the vent. She reached out and touched it with her small hand. Aaron's eyes widened as the metal around her fingers began to shimmer. It was as if the surface was turning liquid, warping, bending without making a sound. When she pulled her hand back, the vent hole was twice its size. Aaron stared at her. "How?" She shook her head quickly. "No time." "Go," she urged. The sound outside was close, too close. Aaron crouched and helped her into the vent first, then followed. It was a tight crawl, the metal cold against his knees and elbows, behind them. The door to the storage room slid open, and alien voices barked commands. The sound of armored feet hitting the floor echoed into the vent. Faster, Aaron whispered. They crawled until the vent dropped sharply downward into a larger tunnel. Aaron jumped first, landing in ankle-deep. Water then caught Lyra as she slid down after him. The air here was damp and foul, but it was away from the patrol. At least for now. Aaron looked at her again. You can bend metal. She hesitated, her big eyes watching him. Only small, she said finally. Mothers say, never show. Dangerous if others see. Aaron understood too well. People with special abilities in wartime didn't get treated as people. They got used like weapons. All right, he said quietly. Then we keep it between us. They moved on. Deeper into the underground network, the hum of the city above was faint now, but so was their sense of direction. Aaron stopped to check his wrist display again. No signal. The comms were dead this deep underground. Suddenly, the water at their feet rippled. Aaron's instincts kicked in, and he raised his weapon. From the darkness ahead came a slow, heavy slosh, then a wet scraping sound against the tunnel wall. Two pale, eyeless shapes slid into view, their long limbs ending in hooked claws. Lyra gasped softly. Aaron pulled her behind him. These weren't soldiers, they were tunnel predators, drawn by sound and movement. The first one hissed, its jaw opening to wide rows of needle teeth. Catching the dim light, Aaron fired a short burst. The creature reeled but didn't fall. Run, Aaron said, pushing Lyra forward. They splashed through the water, the creatures screeching and clambering after them. One lunged, its claws scraping Aaron's shoulder plate, leaving a deep scratch in the armor. They rounded a corner and found an old maintenance ladder leading upward. Aaron lifted Lyra onto the first rung. Climb. She scrambled up quickly, her small hands moving fast despite her fear. Aaron fired another burst down the tunnel before following. The ladder opened into a crumbling warehouse basement. Moonlight spilled through cracks in the roof, painting silver streaks across the dusty floor. They stayed still for a moment, listening. The creatures below hissed in frustration, but didn't follow up the ladder. Aaron took a slow breath. They were out of the tunnels, but the city above was still burning, and the patrol would be searching. Lyra tugged on his sleeve. Aaron, they know where we go, she whispered. He frowned. How? Her eyes lowered. They can smell me? The warehouse basement was silent except for the faint crackle of fire outside. The light through the roof cracks painted Lyra's silver skin in cold patterns, making her look almost like a statue. Aaron scanned the exit's two doors, both hanging crooked on their frames, and a staircase that looked half-collapsed. It wasn't much, but it was better than the tunnels full of things with claws. They can smell you, Aaron asked, his voice low. Lyra nodded slowly. They call me Key. I don't know why. Mother said never let them find me, but they always try. Aaron had heard the term before, once, in a classified mission briefing. The Key was rumored to be some kind of living artifact, able to unlock alien tech older than any species in the galaxy. If that was true, she wasn't just a civilian, she was the most valuable target in the war. He crouched, so his eyes were level with hers. Lyra, if they get you, bad things will happen. I won't let that happen, but you have to listen to everything I say, no matter what. Understand? Her wide, luminous eyes locked onto his, and she nodded without hesitation. Yes. Aaron. The ground shook. Dust fell from the ceiling, and a deep mechanical thud echoed outside. Aaron's stomach tightened. Enemy mech. The sound of plasma rifles followed, sharp and electric. They were closing in. He moved to the nearest door and peeked through a gap in the wood. Shadows moved. In the street, tall figures in black armor. Their helmets shaped like insect skulls. Two of them dragged a glowing scanner between them, the beams sweeping over rubble and walls. Aaron's eyes narrowed. They're tracking her signature. He muttered. The scanner's light passed over the warehouse wall. It paused. "Time to move," Aaron said. Grabbing Lyra's hand, they bolted for the far exit, slipping into a narrow alley behind the warehouse. The air outside was hot and smelled of scorched metal. The battle wasn't far. "Ah!" Shout in the alien tongue erupted behind them. Then came the hiss of energy bolts slicing through the air. Aaron shoved Lyra against the wall, his body covering hers as a bolt smashed into the stone beside them. Sending shards into his armor, he fired back short. Controlled bursts, and two soldiers went down, their armor sparking as they hit the ground. "Run," he ordered, pushing her ahead. The alley opened into a half-destroyed marketplace. Stalls lay overturned, fruit rotting in the dirt, and the skeleton of a burned hovercart blocked part of the path. They weaved through the wreckage, Aaron firing at the soldiers, cutting them off from the other side. One shot grazed his arm, the heat burning through the outer plating of his suit. He ignored it. Lyra was all that mattered now. A mech shadow fell across the street. The machine's massive legs thudded against the cracked pavement, its arm-mounted cannon swinging. Toward them, Aaron grabbed Lyra and dove behind a pile of metal crates as the first blast hit. The shockwave threw dust and debris into the air, the noise making Lyra cover her ears with a cry. Aaron pulled a grenade from his belt, armed it, and tossed it under the mech's front leg. The explosion tore the limb apart, sending the machine tilting sideways before it crashed into a building. "Go, go, go!" he shouted, pulling Lyra toward the east side of the market. They ducked into another alley, hearts pounding, but halfway through, an alien soldier stepped out from the shadows. Blade drawn, Aaron swung his rifle up, empty. The soldier lunged. Aaron blocked with the rifle's body, shoving Lyra back. The alien's strength was crushing, forcing him to step back against the wall. Then, without warning, the metal blade in the soldier's hand began to warp. It bent inward, folding on itself like paper until it snapped in two. Aaron didn't need to guess who did it. Lyra stood a few steps away, her small hands trembling but her eyes locked on. The soldier, Aaron, slammed the broken rifle stock into the alien's helmet. Dropping him, he grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her along. "You saved my life," he said breathlessly as they ran. She shook her head. "You saved mine first." They emerged onto an old rail line that cut through the lower part of the city. The tracks stretched into the distance, half buried under debris. If they followed, it might lead out of the combat zone, but before they could take more than a few steps, Aaron's cums came alive. His squad leader again. "Hell, where are you? We've got evac ships leaving in 10 minutes. If you're not there, you're on your own." Aaron stared down the empty tracks. If he left now, maybe he could still make it back with the intel and save his career. If he stayed with Lyra, the army would mark him as a WL, and they'd both be hunted. He looked at her, small, fragile, but carrying something the enemy was willing to burn a city for. And in her eyes, that same unshakable trust he'd seen in the tunnel. The decision wasn't hard anymore. He tapped his cum once. "Sir, I'm not coming in. I've got something more important." Static filled the line for a second before the voice came back, cold and final. "You just threw your life away, Hale." Aaron switched the cum off and turned to Lyra. "Let's keep moving," as they walked down the broken tracks. The sound of the battlefield faded, but in the distance, he could still hear the low hum of alien ships searching. They wouldn't stop. Neither would he. The broken rail line led them into the city's abandoned industrial sector. Tall factory towers leaned at odd angles, their metal frames groaning in the wind. Thick pipes ran like dead veins along the walls, many cracked open and dripping dark. Fluid onto the ground, Aaron kept Lyra close as they moved, his rifle loaded with the few rounds he had left. The sector was quieter than the streets they'd crossed before, but the silence felt wrong, too heavy, too expectant. "Why we come?" "Here," Lyra asked softly, "because nobody sane would." Aaron answered, "That means we have a chance." But deep down, he knew the enemy wasn't just chasing at random. They had trackers, scanners, and soldiers trained for this kind of hunt. A metallic hiss cut through the silence. Aaron froze, pushing Lyra behind a large storage tank. Shapes emerged from the shadows. 6 of them. Moving in perfect formation, they wore black can-silver armor, smoother than the standard troopers, with narrow visors glowing faint blue. Their weapons were compact but deadly. Designed for precision, Aaron didn't need to guess this was an elite capture unit. The one in front raised a hand, and the others spread out silently, their steps light despite the armor. They weren't here to kill. They were here to take Lyra alive. Aaron's grip on his rifle tightened. "Stay low. Don't move unless I tell you," he whispered to Lyra. She nodded, her small fingers gripping the hem of his armor. The first soldier passed within 5 meters. Aaron waited until the last second, then stepped out and fired. The shot caught the soldier in the side of the helmet, knocking him to the ground. The others reacted instantly, 2 dropping to one knee and firing suppression blasts while the rest flanked. Aaron moved fast, pulling Lyra down a narrow maintenance walkway between 2 collapsing buildings. Plasma bolts sliced into the walls. Showering sparks, one of the soldiers leaped down from above, landing between them and the exit. Aaron didn't hesitate. He slammed into the soldier, driving the stock of his rifle into the alien's throat joint. The armor cracked with a sharp pop, and the soldier fell. "Go," Aaron barked, pushing Lyra ahead again. They broke into a large, open factory floor. The ceiling had collapsed in parts, letting shafts of daylight cut through the dust. Giant machines stood silent, their belts and gears frozen mid-motion coated in rust. The elite unit poured in from multiple entrances. Spreading out in a half circle, Aaron counted 5 left. He fired toward the nearest one, forcing them to take cover. But he was running out of ammo. The click of the rifle's empty chamber confirmed it. One soldier advanced slowly, a net launcher aimed at Lyra. Aaron stepped in front of her, ready to block with his body. But then something strange happened. The machine beside them, a towering press with massive steel jaws, suddenly grown to life. Its gears turned, the rust cracking off like old skin, and with a deafening crash, it slammed down between Aaron and the soldier, crushing the net mid-flight. Aaron turned to Lyra, wide-eyed. "You did that?" Her breathing was fast, and her eyes glowed faintly brighter than before. "I didn't mean to," she said quickly. "It listens to me. Machines." "Listen," Aaron didn't have time to process. The enemy was still moving in. He grabbed her hand and sprinted toward a stairwell that led up to the factories. Upper platforms, the old metal groaned under their boots, threatening to give way with each step. The soldiers followed, their armor clanking as they climbed from the other side. Halfway across the top walkway, a blast hit one of the support beams. The entire structure tilted, a loud screech echoing through the building. Aaron scooped Lyra into his arms and jumped to the next platform as the walkway behind them collapsed. Taking 2 soldiers with it, they landed hard, rolling against a stack of old supply crates. Aaron's shoulder burned from the impact, but he pushed through the pain. The last 3 soldiers regrouped below. Scanning for a way up, one of them raised a communicator to their helmet. Aaron knew what that meant. Reinforcements. They had to disappear now. He spotted a half-open cargo elevator at the far end of the platform. It hung suspended by thick cables, leading down into a dark shaft. "Hold on tight," Aaron told Lyra. They ran for it as the soldiers began climbing the support beams. Aaron hit the release lever, and the elevator jerked downward, rattling violently, halfway down. One of the cables snapped with a sharp twang. The platform tilted. Dangerously, Lyra pressed her hands to the control panel, her silver skin sparking faintly against the metal. The falling slowed, not stopped, but slowed enough for Aaron to grab a side beam as they neared the bottom. They jumped off just before the elevator, crashed into the floor below with a deafening boom. The bottom level was darker, colder, and wet with dripping condensation. Pipes hissed softly overhead and somewhere deeper in the shadows. Faint lights blinked in sequence. Aaron crouched beside Lyra, both of them breathing hard. "Machines listen to you," he said slowly. "That's why they call you the key." She nodded, looking down. "Mother said our people can open the old gates. They lead to power, too much power. That's why they want me." Aaron clenched his jaw. This wasn't just about saving her anymore. If the enemy got her, they could unlock whatever was behind those gates. From above, voices shouted in the alien tongue, echoing down the shaft. The hunt wasn't over. Aaron reloaded his last magazine and looked at her. "We move now. We don't stop until they can't follow." She gave a small, determined nod. They disappeared into the lower tunnels, the sound of their footsteps swallowed by the hum of old machines waking in the dark. The lower tunnels carried them farther than Aaron expected. Hours passed in darkness. The only sound their footsteps and the faint hiss of steam from old pipes. The air grew colder. The faint wind began to stir, a sign they were nearing the surface when they finally emerged. The city's edge stretched before them. Beyond the broken wall lay open wasteland, jagged rocks, low hills, and the faint glow of a lightning storm brewing on the horizon. Aaron knelt beside Lyra, scanning the terrain. "We're almost clear," he said quietly. "Once we're over those hills, it's another day's walk to the safe zone." Lyra shivered under the cold wind, her torn clothes fluttering. She looked small against the vast emptiness ahead, but her eyes stayed fixed on the path. Aaron moved first, leading her across the rocky ground. Each step took them farther from the smoke and noise of the city, but his instincts refused to relax. Something was wrong. The storm ahead grew quickly. Black clouds rolling low across the sky. Lightning split the horizon in jagged white lines, and the wind began to howl. Then he heard it, a deep, rhythmic thud behind them. Not thunder, boots. Aaron turned sharply, pulling Lyra behind a rock. Outcrop shapes emerged from the city ruins, 5 soldiers in black-hand silver armor. Moving in a wide formation, the elite unit had found them again. "They don't stop," Lyra whispered. "They won't," Aaron replied, "but neither will I." The soldiers moved with patience, their steps sure. Rifles ready. Aaron knew they wouldn't open fire unless they had to. Their orders were to take Lyra alive. The first drops of rain began to fall, fat and cold, splashing against the rocks. The wind carried the smell of ozone, sharper now. As the storm closed in, Aaron led Lyra along the slope of a low hill, trying to stay out of sight. But the soldiers adjusted their path immediately. They were hurting them. A bolt of lightning struck the ground less than 50 meters away, the blast shaking the earth. The flash illuminated their hunters clearly, blue visors glowing in the rain, water running down their armor plates. Aaron found a cluster of jagged rocks and pulled Lyra into cover. He checked his ammo, barely half a magazine left. "They want me," Lyra said quietly. "They won't stop until I'm theirs." Aaron met her gaze. "They'll have to go through me first." The first soldier appeared on the ridge above. Rifle aimed, Aaron fired before the man could take the shot, rounds sparking against the visor and dropping him. The others opened fire immediately, plasma bolts tearing into the rocks around them. Aaron returned fire in bursts, forcing them to duck. But the rain was making it harder to aim. A shadow loomed to his right. One of the soldiers had flanked them in the storm. Aaron turned to late, the soldier swinging a stun baton toward him, but before it connected, the soldier's weapon bent at an impossible angle, the metal twisting like rope. The man staggered back in shock, and Lyra stepped out from behind Aaron. Her eyes glowed brighter than ever. Silver light reflecting in the rain. The air around her seemed to hum, and nearby machinery, the soldiers' rifles, their armor joints began to rattle. One soldier tried to fire, a Butt's rifle locked solid in his hands, the barrel sealing shut. Another's armor clamps released with a sharp hiss, parts of his chest plate falling away. Aaron had seen her control small things before. But this was different. The storm itself seemed to answer her. Lightning struck the ridge where two soldiers stood. The flash so bright it left a white afterimage. The blast threw them backward into the mud, their weapons sparking uselessly. The last soldier lunged toward her, but Aaron intercepted him, tackling him hard into the wet ground. They struggled in the mud, fists and elbows landing heavy blows. Aaron grabbed the soldier's helmet and slammed it against a rock until the visor cracked. When he looked up, Lyra stood in the center of the rocks, rain swirling around her like a living thing. The glow in her eyes faded slowly, and the metallic rattling stopped. The storm howled louder now, the wind pushing against them as if urging them to leave. Aaron pulled her close. "You saved us," he said. She shook her head. "You kept me alive long enough to do it." They left the fallen soldiers behind, their bodies half buried in rain and mud. Ahead, the hills rose like black teeth against the flashing sky. Aaron knew the enemy would send more, and soon. But for now, they had a lead. They climbed the first ridge as the storm roared above, each step taking them farther from the burning city and deeper into whatever destiny Lyra carried inside her. The storm had weakened by the time Aaron and Lyra crossed the last ridge. The rain still fell in thin sheets, dripping from the edge of Aaron's helmet. But the worst of the wind was gone. Below them stretched a wide valley dotted with patches of green and the glow of scattered lights. "That's it," Aaron said, pointing to a cluster of buildings near the far side. The lights shimmered in the damp air, faint, warm, and steady. It was the kind of sight that made tired soldiers think of shelter and food. Lyra's small fingers gripped his glove. "It looks nice," she said, but her voice was quiet, cautious. Aaron knew better than to trust appearances. But he also knew they couldn't survive another night in the open without rest. They made their way down into the valley, sticking to the grass and avoiding the mud paths where tracks might show. The closer they got, the clearer the buildings became, a mix of metal shelters and stone houses, their walls patched and reinforced. A tall fence of welded scrap metal surrounded the settlement. Two guards stood at the main gate, their armor mismatched but clean, rifles slung across their shoulders. Aaron stopped a few meters away, keeping his hands visible, were looking for shelter. He called the guards, exchanged a quick look before one stepped forward. "You're human," the guard said, surprise in his voice. "Not many of you come through here anymore." "And the girl?" "She's with me," Aaron said firmly. The guard studied Lyra for a moment, then nodded toward the gate. "Come in. You look like you've seen hell." Inside, the settlement was busy. Despite the late hour, people moved between stalls, the smell of cooking food mixing with the smoke from small fires. Children darted through the narrow streets, laughing as they chased each other. It was almost normal. Aaron felt the tension in his shoulders loosen just a little. They were shown to a small metal shelter at the edge of the settlement. Inside, it was warm and dry, with a cot and a water dispenser. "You can rest here," the guard said. "Food will be brought to you. The council will want to speak with you tomorrow." When the door closed, Lyra sat on the cot, her eyes scanning the room. "You don't trust them?" she said. Aaron shook his head. "I trust what I see, not what I'm told. And I see, too. Much interest in you already." He checked the room's walls, metal panels with faint seams. Too clean. Too new compared to the rest of the settlement. Hours passed quietly. Lyra slept curled under a thin blanket, while Aaron sat by the door. Rifle across his knees, it was close to dawn when the faintest sound woke him. A soft click near the wall. He turned slowly, spotting a narrow panel sliding open. A small lens peeked through, glowing faint red. Aaron's stomach tightened. A hidden camera. He crossed the room silently, covered the lens with his hand, then ripped the device out. The wires behind it led into the wall. Pulsing faintly with power, Lyra woke at the noise. "What is it?" she asked, rubbing her eyes. "They're watching us," Aaron said. "Get your things. We're leaving." But before they could reach the door, it swung open. 5 men entered, not in guard armor, but in dark civilian clothing, the kind used by mercenaries. Aaron Hale, the man in front, said, "Former captain of the Human Alliance, wanted for desertion. And you've brought us the key." Aaron stepped between them and Lyra. "You're not the council," he said flatly. The man smiled faintly. "The council doesn't run this place. We do. And we've been waiting for her." 2 of the men stepped forward, one holding a stun baton. Aaron moved first. He slammed the door shut with his foot, grabbed the nearest man by the collar, and drove him into the wall. The second swung the baton, but Aaron caught his wrist. Twisting until the weapon clattered to the floor, Lyra pressed herself against the far wall, her eyes glowing faintly. One of the men reached for her, and the cot frame suddenly bent upward, slamming into his legs and knocking him flat. Metal groaned as if alive under her will. Aaron grabbed Lyra's arm, out the back. They crashed through the thin rear wall of the shelter, spilling into an alley. Shouts erupted behind them, followed by the sound of boots pounding on the metal streets. The settlement's warm glow was gone, replaced by the cold knowledge that every person here could be part of the trap. They ran toward the fence. Ducking behind stalls and storage crates, a guard spotted them and raised his rifle. But Aaron shot first, the man dropping without a sound. The outer gate was ahead, locked with 2 more mercenaries standing guard. Aaron fired, hitting one in the shoulder and forcing the other to duck. Lyra's eyes locked on the gate's lock mechanism. The metal buckled, the hinges snapping free. The gate swung open just as another alarm siren began to howl through the settlement. They slipped into the darkness beyond, the valley stretching behind them, the storm clouds from the night before breaking apart. Aaron didn't look back. They had escaped. But now he knew the enemy wasn't just chasing them from behind. They were already waiting ahead. The sun was low and red when Aaron and Lyra reached the canyon mouth. The path narrowed between towering cliffs of rust-colored stone, shadows stretching long across the ground. Every step forward made the air feel heavier, charged, as if the canyon itself was holding its breath. Then they saw it. The old gate rose from the rock like something grown rather than built, an arch of smooth, silvery metal. Its surface alive with thin glowing veins that pulsed like blood through a giant's heart. Symbols neither of them could read were carved deep into its surface, shifting faintly as if they didn't want to stay still. Lyra stopped, staring up at it. Her silver eyes reflected the glow perfectly. "This is it," she whispered, voice trembling. The old gate. Aaron scanned the area. Steep cliff walls on both sides. Only one path forward, nowhere to hide. "It's older than anything I've seen," he said quietly, "and I've seen things buried in the ruins of 3 wars. She nodded slowly. "My people built it before the wars, before your kind even walked the stars. They say it leads to a place of great power." enough to end all battles. Or start worse ones. Aaron's gut tightened, and they want you to open it for them. A sharp, echoing crack rang through the canyon. Not from the gate, from behind. Aaron turned, his eyes narrowing. Figures spilled from the cliffside. Past the black can-silver armored elite unit. Rifles raised and glowing blue. Behind them came the mercenaries from the settlement, led by the same man who had tried to take Lyra in the night. His grin was wide and cruel when he saw her. Aaron pulled Lyra behind a tall boulder as the first wave of plasma fire streaked past, sizzling against the stone. They've been ahead of us the whole time, Aaron muttered. The mercenary leader's voice boomed across the canyon. Give us the girl, Hale. Walk away now, and maybe you live to see another sunrise. Karen shouted back. You'll have to kill me first. The soldiers advanced in perfect formation, their fire hammering the rock around him. Aaron fired back, dropping one, then another. But for each one that fell, two more moved forward. Lyra crouched close to him, her hands gripping her knees. Aaron, if I open the gate, they'll follow. If I don't, they'll take me and make me do it. Aaron met her gaze, his voice steady despite the chaos. Then we make sure no one can use it. Her eyes widened. No one's ever destroyed an old gate. I don't know if I can. You? Can, Aaron said firmly, because you have something they don't. The choice to stop it. Another plasma burst slammed into the boulder. Showering them with fragments, Aaron leaned out and took down a soldier on the ridge, then ducked back just before a volley cut the air where his head had been. Now Lyra. He shouted. She stepped out from cover, the glow in her eyes igniting into a fierce, steady light. The lines on the gate responded instantly, flaring brighter. The hum in the air growing deep enough to rattle Aaron's teeth. The enemy hesitated. Momentarily unsure, the mercenary leader roared. Stop her. Two soldiers broke formation, charging toward her. The ground beneath them buckled, and thin metal veins erupted from the canyon floor, wrapping around their legs like living chains. They fought to move, but the metal tightened until they collapsed. In the dust, a soldier on the cliff took aim, but the barrel of his rifle twisted in his hands before he could fire. The weapon ceiling shut with a groan. Aaron moved in sync with her whenever a soldier broke through. He was there, tackling them, smashing them against rock. Ripping weapons from their hands, the gate's hum became a roar, the air shimmering with heat. Its arch began to crack, light spilling through in jagged bursts. The mercenary leader pulled a heavy rifle from his back and aimed directly at Lyra's chest. Aaron saw it too late to reach her. He fired his last bullet, the shot punching into the rifle's power cell and sending it exploding in the leader's hands. The blast threw him backward, smoke curling from the shattered weapon. Lyra's voice rose above the storm of sound. Go back, all of you. The light pouring from the cracks in the gate grew so bright it painted the canyon walls in silver white. The metal warped inward, folding on itself like paper in a fire, the veins snapping one by one with sharp, ringing notes. The elite soldiers began to retreat, shields raised against the blinding light. The mercenaries fled to Lu, their leader dragging himself away with burned hands. Aaron shielded his eyes as the gate's final pieces tore free, twisting and vanishing in a flash that shook the ground. Then silence. Where the gate had stood was only a scorched outline on the rock, its symbols gone. Its power bled into nothing. Aaron lowered his arm and looked at Lyra. Her knees trembled, her breathing ragged, but her eyes still held that faint silver glow. You did it, he said, his voice quieter now. She swayed, and he caught her before she fell. They can't use it now, she whispered. The canyon was emptying fast without the gate. There was nothing left for the enemy to fight over. Aaron knew they'd be hunted still. But the worst danger was gone. He helped her to her feet. So, where do you want to go? Lyra's tired smile was small but real. Somewhere they can't find us. Somewhere we can be free. Aaron nodded. Then that's where we'll go. They left the canyon together, their footsteps fading into the open land beyond. The war would continue, somewhere far away. But the secret of the old gate was gone. Forever. And Aaron knew he hadn't just saved a child, he'd saved a future.